Good morning and welcome to Hometown Heroes. We have a special guest with us today. This is Gene Pugh. He's a Vietnam Special Forces MACV-SOG veteran, and he's going to tell us a little bit, if not a whole lot, about some of his experiences in Vietnam and how it was working for a secret clandestine group that for many years was totally classified. It took decades before parts of that were declassified. So welcome aboard, Gene. We're glad to have you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Trust me, it is an honor and a pleasure to be with you today.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you on here. I've watched some of your podcasts that you've been on and done a lot of research about you, and it's just amazing the things that you went through. So kind of just tell us how you got into the Special Forces part and how things happened whenever you went to Vietnam.
Well, I was in college, 1964, 66, so on and so forth. And at that time, the song, the Ballad of the Green Berets came around. And that piqued me and everything else. The thing about it was that I was already exposed to Special Forces, being born and raised in Panama, in Central America. At that time, the 8th Special Forces Group was stationed at Fort Gulick, and I had interacted with them on and off. And so I was familiar with Special Forces. In February of 66, I joined the United States Army, and they had the in-house recruiters come in. And they were looking for people to join, to become helicopter pilots, to become paratroopers, go to other specialty type of schools. And at the far end of the presenters was a guy by the name of Sergeant First Class Lou Minor. I'll never forget his name. And he said, "I'm looking for volunteers." So I raised my hand. My name was taken. A week or so later, they called me in. The first sergeant called me in and he says, "You're in for a airborne physical." I said, "I did not volunteer for airborne." He says, "Yes, you did. When you volunteered for Special Forces, you volunteered for Airborne School, private." And he said, "You realize there's only two things that fall out of the sky?" I said, "Not aware of that, sir." He says, "Dumb shit and bird shits. Now, which one are you?" I said, "I guess I'm a dumb shit. Get the hell out of my office and report to dispensary number 3. So I did. And from then on, I was on the wrong side of the first sergeant. Long story short.
Never a good place to be, I'll tell you.
Yes, that's for sure. And so fast forward after jump school, went to Fort Bragg. There were about 260 in our group. And 9 months later, there were 44 of us walking across the stage, getting our berets. And it was an eye-opener. It really was. And it wasn't so much, it was a physical and everything else. There was no doubt about it, but it was more mental. It was more mental. And you would have these guys that looked like Arnold Schwarzenegger, all muscled up and everything else. And you're looking, my God, I don't have a chance. And they were the first ones to drop out. And then you had these super duper athletes. They would do 1,000 push-ups or 1,000 sit-ups or whatever. They could do it physically, but they just didn't have the right mental attitude because a lot of it was mental. After my training, initial training, I was assigned to Charlie Company, 6th Special Forces Group. And my ODA, Operational Detachment Alpha, was comprised, I should say, of former DPs. These are displaced people from Europe. One of them a guy by the name of Jerry Kropik. In my novel, by the way, I used the name Kropecki, but his real name was Kropik. He was a World War II German paratrooper, wounded in the Battle of Stalingrad, was evacuated in one of the last Ju-52s out of Berlin, out of Stalingrad, went to Berlin, spent some time there, went to convalesce in a little place called Normandy, 1944. Anyway, long story short, after the war, he became a border guard on the Czechoslovakian border, defected, joined the French Foreign Legion, was at the Battle of Dien Bien Phu, wounded again. His tour with the French ended, joined the American Army, got into Special Forces, and he was one of my mentors. The man had the humor of a pit bull. And because of him and some of the other ones that we had on the team, I had Hungarian freedom fighters. I had a man that was on Tito's partisans during World War II. Those were my mentors.
So you had a lot of great warriors that had been there and done that.
I did. And so from them, you had to earn your beret. You really, it was not given, you earned it. And they tested you every day. My team leader was a former enlisted. He was a captain now. And he too, because I was the young kid on the block. And he wanted to make sure that I survived. When I got to Vietnam, I was going through the administration portion there, admin processing in, and they put down CNC, command and control. And of course, I asked, hey, what's command and control? Can't tell you. I said, okay. One of the individuals that went through the combat orientation course was the guy by the name of Fred Zapotowski. Fred Zapotowski was on light duty due to the wounds that he received, where he earned the Medal of Honor. And he was one of my commo instructors. So I knew him.
This was in Vietnam?
In Vietnam.
Okay.
And so I asked, he said, where are you going? I says, no, he says, where are you being assigned? And I said, some outfit called CNC. And he said, whatever I teach you in small unit tactics, you take it to the bank. Get yourself in shape. And then he said, what did I just say? I said, get yourself in shape. I said, get yourself in shape, especially running. I said, okay. And I did. When I got to FOB 4, latter part of May of '68, I was assigned to the message center. And of course, being the young stud that I thought I was, I wanted to go recon. And Sergeant Quiroga said, find your replacement and you go on to recon. And but the middle part of August, we were getting these reports, and the ones that come into play was around August the 19th. We received a flash or Zulu message that said attack imminent. And I remember taking the message to Colonel Warren, and he looked at it. He says, I'll take care of it. This was around 10:45 or so at night. And I realized that I didn't have a weapon. And I got scared. I really did. I got scared because I figured, hey, attack imminent. These people know what's going on. Nothing happened. And I was in the barracks number 3. If you look at the from left to right, you will see 1, 2, 3, 4. I was in barracks number 3. Barracks number 4 was the senior NCO barracks. And the talk is the one that's to the west. And it's just to the right of the building that looks like a modified N. And that was the concrete talk. And there's where I was. And the senior officers barracks was the first barracks directly behind the one that looks like a modified U or N to the left. That was a senior NCO barracks.
This is a FOB 4, which is
FOB 4.
Da Nang. On one side, you've got the South China Sea. Is that correct?
That would be on the east side, correct.
And then on the other side, you've got, is it Marble Mountain?
Marble Mountain would be on your right side as you're looking at the photograph, yes.
So, I mean, this is out of the jungle, and it's
out of the beach, really. We were right on the beach itself. And Marble Mountain was basically, if you were just to get a rock, they just came out of the sand. That was it. There was no slope, no anything. It just came out of the sand. That was Marble Mountain right there. And our camp was right at the base of it on the north side of the Marble Mountain. And on the 20th, I received another flash Zulu message, and Master Sergeant Danny West took the message to the colonel. Now, this is where it gets interesting, because on the 22nd, a hatchet force, which is about 120 men, did a mission about 2 miles south of Marble Mountain, and they had encountered a NVA unit. And we think it was the 23rd NVA Regiment. And they got into a serious furball with them. The Marines also got into a serious furball with them. That evening, a lot of the people were coming in for the promotion board that was going to be held on Friday, the 23rd. We also had people going on R&R. We had people going other locations. We had 3 teams that were going on an in-country training north of Fubai up at a place called Mylock. So I'm going to venture to say that we had approximately maybe 160 men in camp. I'm going to use 160 as a base there. Earlier, about midweek or on Wednesday, 21st, Larry Trimble was sent up to the top of Marble Mountain along with Cecil Ames. And it was a 7-man team that was sent up there. And they were to monitor activity, 22 millimeter rockets that were being fired on Da Nang, and basically just monitoring the area around the camp. That night, on the 22nd, the movie was Rosemary's Baby. And the reason I say that because Travis Mills, who I'll refer to later on, you'll find out why that was so important. Routine night. Quiet. The Special Forces camp at Thung Duck was being attacked. I got off at midnight, and I was in the far west corner room that was also used as a transient room. There were 2 officers, actually 3 officers. There was Lieutenant Dahl, Lieutenant Potter, Captain Lamb, and there was another individual there that I can't remember who his name was. And John Dodd bunked on top of the double bunks that we had at the time. Sometime around 2:15, 2:30, or something like that, heard a muffled explosion. Of course, his wife, just woke us up. And for some dumb reason, you know how you do things and you go, boy, that was dumb. I looked out our door and I saw a homemade Vietcong grenade just roll down. And if you look at the photographs, you'll see that this is a long barracks, which means that you had rooms on either side of this long hall. And of course, I yelled out, grenade. Lieutenant Dahl said, where? And I said, outside our door. And since it was homemade, the timing fuse was somewhere between 0 and 20 seconds. American grenades are usually 6 seconds long. But this being a homemade deal, anywhere between 0 and 20 seconds was the fuse. He said some choice words, and both of us went to the door like a bunch of idiots, and that's when it decided to go off. And based the way that we were standing, I believe that he received the majority of shrapnel. I did get some, but it was what I would call now a John Kerry type of a wound. I've had worse cuts shaving. And right then and there was a massive explosion. I mean, it was, of course, dark. Everybody of us fell on the floor, the whole bit. And we started yelling out, everybody okay, everybody okay, everybody okay. Unbeknownst to us, Lieutenant Potter got killed.
From the grenade explosion?
No, yeah, from the satchel explosion. It was a satchel that was put right outside the window where he was.
Mm.
And Lieutenant Dahl said the son of a gun is going down the hallway. So Lieutenant Dahl was kind of like a power lifter kind, short, kind of like a fire hydrant, had no neck, just short and powerful. He's running down the hallway barefoot. He's got his pants on, and he's got his Swedish K, and I'm running right behind him. And he goes out to the east end, which is towards the ocean, and I hear 2 shots. Got you son of a bitch. And the next breath, he says, I'm hit. So I go out, and I'm trying to lift this guy who outweighs me by a good 30 pounds. And I could feel the bullets going right by my head and my bare torso. As an experience and a feeling that sometimes the flashbacks that I do have are those. It's where you wish you would have gotten hit. And they go, and you feel the bullet, feel the air, and you feel the snap right by your ear. And I'm pulling him into the first room. And then I realized that, you know what, bullets go right through these planks. So I put him in the second room on the north side of the building. The south side of the building is where Marble Mountain is. On the north side is where, of course, on the other side of the building. Say that again?
At that time, Gene, it wasn't just your barracks getting attacked, but the whole
That's
camp.
correct. That is correct.
The whole base was under attack.
The whole thing was under attack. We were getting, there were explosions everywhere, and the explosions came from grenades, satchel charges, and mortar fire. It was raining mortars. Let's go up now to the top of Marble Mountain, where Larry Trimble was. Larry felt at that time that he should be down in camp. And there he was on top of the mountain, and he couldn't contribute to the defense of the camp. That's what he felt. That's what he told me later on. But then he could hear the mortars going off, firing off the tubes on the south side of the mountain. Because of the topography and the little path, the little trail, only one man could go down. And so he worked his way down so where he could see where they were firing, and he engaged the enemy. And whoops. Oh, here we go. Trying to figure out what happened here. Let me put a little bit of juice on this machine here. Good. Because I don't have it plugged in. We'll try it here. I don't want to have another. There we go. So anyway, he engaged the enemy in knocking the mortar pit out.
So were they set up on the mountain or at the base of the mountain?
Below the mountain. They were sent below the mountain.
Okay.
And then there was a ground assault. Once he knocked them out, there was a ground assault on his person. And he eliminated that ground assault by himself.
My goodness.
Let's flash over now to where Travis Mills was. An explosion comes out, and he comes running out of his hooch, and there's a guy waiting for him. Shoots him in the stomach. And he yells and screams, "I'm an American." Well, the guy shoots him again. He gets up, "I'm an American." The guy shoots him again. 3 times.
Guy didn't like Americans.
No, he didn't. So then Larry figures, you know what? If I quit standing up, maybe he'd quit shooting. In the meantime, the guy shot him 1 more time, actually 2 more times, a total of 5 times. And the guy goes over there and straddles him, and he's about to shoot him in the back of the head. And the reason I said Rosemary's Baby, because at the very end of the movie, you could hear the heartbeat. I've never seen the movie, but he could hear the heartbeat of the actor. And by the way, Travis lives about 17 miles just north of me.
Does he really?
He really does. And he said there was a certain calmness. He says, well, this is it. And right then and there was a noise, and it distracted the shooter. And the shooter ran over to the far end of the barracks. And the guy by the name of Robert Blatherwick comes out, and Trav says, hey, Bob, don't come out. Why? He's at the far end of the building. Where? He says, you see that bump at the far end? That sandbag? Yeah, that's not a sandbag. You want me to shoot a sandbag? Just shoot. You want me to shoot a sandbag? Just shoot the sandbags. And he did. Later on, we found out that the guy was shot right between the headlights.
That's a pretty good shot in the dark, isn't it?
In the dark. Now we go back to where Gene Pugh was. And he's in the room in the corner there, and Captain Lamb shows up. And Captain Lamb came that far from getting shot. He's Oriental. But I had seen him earlier in the day, so I was able then to go, okay, he's a good guy. And I said, Captain, you better stick close to me. Someone's liable to shoot you. And he goes, yeah.
Now in the forward base, you didn't just have Americans, but you had some North Vietnamese that were fighting with y'all.
Correct.
And were part of your team. So just a great amount of confusion in the dark because you didn't know if it was a good guy or a bad guy. Or
in fact, I'm getting to the point here where by the Hatchet Force and the Recon area on the far east side of the camp where they were billeted, the North Vietnamese had set up a machine gun nest. And they were raking the longhouses. I mean, they were just back and forth, just shooting, and they killed a lot of Vietnamese, a lot of Montagnards, and so on and so forth, a lot of indigenous personnel. So anybody that would come out, they would shoot at them. They had us pinned down. Like I mentioned earlier, the medic showed up and it was taking care of Lieutenant Dahl. To this day, I don't know who this medic is or was. I had told Captain Lamb that I was going to check on the medic. And I could hear, it's one of those noises that is hard to describe. But someone was sneaking up in the hallway. You could kind of sense it the way that, the noise was. They were trying to sneak up on you. And right about that time, I could see a person. I did not know who it was because it was dark. And right then and there was an explosion on the far end of the east side of the building. And it lit up the Viet Cong. He had tan shorts, had a belt across his chest, and he had an AK-47. I'm in the room, and I could see him silhouetted, or now seen right there in the door frame. And because of the light, exposed me and exposed him. And we both shot at each other in the dark because by that time the explosion light had already gone out. And I heard a thump. And there was a voice from the outside saying, hey, let's get your wounded out of there, if you have any. Evacuate the building. I said, okay, we're coming out. And we were trying to get the Lieutenant Dahl up, pick him up. And all of a sudden, the medic reached over my shoulder. We were trying to pick up the lieutenant. And he says, "What the hell is that on your shoulders?" I didn't know it at that time, but I had wood splinters on my shoulders from the explosion from the satchel charge that killed Lieutenant Potter. I did not know it. I was completely oblivious to it. I guess the adrenaline was kicking in. And so he just grabbed a handful of stuff and just started pulling them out just by feel. We told Lieutenant Lamb to, we were ready to take out Captain Lamb, and they were going to take the lieutenant out. And we did. Went by my room, our room, and there was a fire. One of the duffel bags was on fire. Turned out to be mine. Did not know that at the time. Went outside and there was a Jeep, and Sergeant Scully, the medic. John Dodd was in the back seat. There was another gentleman in the back seat. And we put Lieutenant Dahl in the front seat. And Pat Watkins, who later on got the Distinguished Service Cross, put a guy by the name of Hoffman on top of the hood of the Jeep and was yelling at him. He says, "Hoffman, if you die on me, so help me God, I'm going to kill you." I thought that was pretty logical, so it was okay. Scully then noticed that I had some blood on me, and there was a Hispanic-looking guy next to me that was also wounded. And he says, "You guys come with me to the dispensary." So he gunned the Jeep, and we follow him over to the dispensary. When I got there, and you know how sometimes you get tunnel vision? Even though I knew that there were other people there and what have you, but all I could see on the floor was this Vietnamese in his shorts, and he had a big, huge hole in his right side. And then I look at my John Kerry stuff, and I'm going, I have no business here. And so the Hispanic guy and I, we leave. And we're getting now, if you look, and I see you have the picture up there, and you see where the motor pool is, and you see there's a right across from it going east, there is a water tower. We're right on that road, and all of a sudden, I look to my right, which would be to the south, and I see a Jeep drive by, and it's receiving fire. And immediately another Jeep goes by going the opposite direction, and it's receiving fire. So I engage the muzzle flashes. As soon as I do that, I'm getting now fire from the water tower. And of course I hit the ground, and then I look up, and then I see the guy falling off the water tower. And I go back to my barracks. And that's when I noticed then for the first time, because by that time the flares have started to come up, that the transient barracks or the NCO barracks no longer exist. It's just been flattened out. And we have individuals now trying to get the survivors out of there. Let's go now over to where the Marble Mountain is, where Travis Mills is. The second mortar is now shooting mortars. And again, because of the topography, Larry goes down the little one-man trail, and he knocks it out again by himself. There's a ground assault. His security group of the mortar they attacked Larry. Then one of his team members says, Trunk C, meaning sergeant. Boku VC, coming from the other trail. So Larry now leaves that post, goes over to the other trail, and engages the ground assault there. Make a long story short, he engaged between 4 to 6 ground assaults by himself. If Larry, he saved the camp. Had the enemy taken control of the high ground, they would have laid waste to the camp with machine gun fire, mortar fire, you name it. I'll get into Larry a little bit more. But Cecil, nothing to take away from Cecil, but Cecil was on the radio. And he was coordinating a lot of stuff with other units, with the Marines and so on and so forth, trying to get reinforcements to the camp. The Marines got ambushed trying to get to our camp.
This whole attack was very well planned, and it had been planned for a while, hadn't it?
That's correct. Their main mission, believe it or not, was to rescue the POWs at the POW camp that was right next to our camp. We were a diversionary action. Their main action was to rescue or to, get the POWs out of the camp.
And all this that you've been telling us about, this is just an hour or so of the battle, wasn't it? Of the attack?
It was 3.5 hours, about 3 hours.
Okay.
And the thing about it was, there was really no unified defense. There were pockets of junior NCOs and junior officers and senior officers and what have you, of maybe 4 or 5 guys or maybe 2 guys that would confront the North Vietnamese and the Viet Cong. And this is where it gets interesting. And this is, of course, after the fact. There were 165 North Vietnamese inside the camp. We had approximately 165 men inside our camp at the time. We lost 16. So if you start doing the math, we lost 16. Inside the talk, we had 10. They were basically non-combatants because they were pinned inside the talk. We had 34 wounded. We had 10 medics. And then we had another 10, 15 men that could not get to their weapons because of different situations. So it comes down to about 50, 55 men that retook the camp from the inside. So I think we did okay.
This was the highest loss of special forces up to that point in one day.
In single engagement, that's correct, sir. And on the other side, this is by body count. We had 38 that we can account for the next morning. This is by, body count. 3 days later, we found 7 bodies that had been buried hastily there by the south wall. Now, again, you look at we were there by the beach. So all they did was just throw sand on them. That was just, quick, they throw sand on them. And after 3 days in the tropical heat, these bodies started to percolate. So they were easy to find. The Marines notified us that there were 17 freshly dug graves by the village. And after the attack, we could see blood trails. We could see drag marks on the east side by the beach and by the south fence where they had broken in. Some of the ones that we had captured tried to mingle in with our indigenous personnel. And one of the high-ranking officers that helped coordinate it was the Vietnamese cook that had just recently been hired. Turned out to be that he was a colonel. And either in the VC structure or in the North Vietnamese structure. We don't know yet. So I think we did okay.
It sounds like you did good.
Yeah.
And you hadn't even started going out on patrols before this. I mean, you were still getting the messages and things like that.
Correct.
So then after this one night, you finally found a replacement, and then you got to get into a lot more things.
Yeah.
As part of that MACV-SOG.
Well, after that, because we had lost so many people, we started getting a good number of replacements. And sure enough, I was able to latch one of them before anyone else could take him. And I said, "You're my replacement. You're going to be in the message center." And since I outranked him because he was just a Spec 4, he was now my replacement. And Sergeant Major Vickers assigned me to Larry Trimble's new team.
And you already knew from just Marble Mountain that Larry was a pretty tough guy.
Oh, yeah. And let me backtrack on the name of the team. RT-Asp was wiped out in March of 1968. Completely wiped out. So RT-Asp, the name was resuscitated by Larry in Melville, Westerfield. Westerfield ran a couple of missions, and then he decided, because he was a little older, he decided this wasn't his cup of tea. His intentions were correct. His body just couldn't do it. So you had to get young men to do it. And the torch was passed on to our generation, the younger guys. And so Tony Bandiera and Phil Quinn were also assigned to RT-Asp. And Larry was going to become now a forward air controller, a covey rider. And when I first met Larry at the club, first words out of his mouth, "What do you think about training?" Phil Quinn and I went in there together, and we said, "Well, we have to train in order to survive." He says, "Good thinking." He says, "Because you know what? There's an enemy commander just over that next mountain training his people twice as hard to kill you." He says, "Don't give him the pleasure." Yes, sir. So we trained and we trained. And our first mission was a DMZ mission. And this is where it gets interesting. Even though cross-border missions were, of course, classified. Missions within the DMZ, demilitarized zone, were really classified. You couldn't have military activity in a demilitarized zone. We were looking for a prisoner. And we were inserted in the afternoon.
How many people were with you?
We were going heavy. Whenever you do a POW snatch, you go in heavy, about 10 men.
That doesn't sound too heavy to me, but what was it, like 3 Americans and the rest?
We went in 3 Americans.
And the rest were North Vietnamese.
Yes.
That
So
were
you
working
have
with
7,
you.
yeah, 7 Vietnamese, 3 Americans, because you would want to have someone in the back that would be with the radio away from the actual ambush. 2 Americans that would activate the snatch, so to speak. Then you would have one on each side of your flankers that were your lookouts. So yes, you would need the personnel, and then you'd also have some people along to protect the radio operator. So yes, you would go in heavy.
And whenever you went on these missions, they were typically set up for a 7-day mission, but usually about 4 days.
Usually 7 days. That was the that was the plan. Never worked that way, but yeah, that was the plan.
And you had to prepare before you went out. I mean,
we would
no
rehearse.
bath, no deodorant. Went to the Vietnamese mess and,
Yes.
and ate Vietnamese food, and
We
no
would prepare.
toothpaste.
We would prepare. We would rehearse. Get into a mindset. We would do the Americans, we would do a little powwow, so to speak, of the what if, so to speak. Now, yes, we would have a primary mission, always a primary mission. And it was unwritten. The secondary mission was looking for POW camps. So you always were looking for POW camps. That was whatever mission you had, secondary POW camps, always.
And so on these missions, I mean, you go into the DMZ, North Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia.
Right. So to give you an example, now we inherited the Thundercloud team. This is the Vietnamese indigenous personnel, the Thundercloud team. They were composed of North Vietnamese. We inherited them from Ops 34, which was, where the CIA, DIA, and the other alphabet people worked for it. But they felt that they were not getting enough information from them. So they were transferred to Ops 35. And we inherited them. Our primary mission really was to get them in there and let them do their thing, because we had the communications. They were dressed in North Vietnamese. They spoke in the Vietnamese accent. You know, for example, yes, we speak English, right? But then as you come from Boston, yeah, you got that Boston accent. And you come from, oh, hey, that's Alabama. That is an Alabama. If I ever heard one, I heard that's Alabama. You know, so again, the same thing with Vietnamese. You know, they would have that North Vietnamese accent. And basically our mission was to get them in there so they could do their thing. We would launch out of Da Nang in a C-130 Blackbird. You're familiar with those, Mary? And we would go to Nang Kom Penom, which was in Thailand, a neutral country. Then we were transferred over to a CH-3 Jolly Green or a CH-53, a Super Jolly. And then we would be inserted into northern Laos, another neutral country. We weren't there, and it never happened.
And you couldn't spend the night in those countries either, could you?
And we could not spend the night in Thailand. And the thing about it was this, that our guns were the A1 Sky Raider because they had the range. Yes, we could have a Cobra. They could fly one way. That was it. They had range for one way. They couldn't do up and back. And then we would refuel at one of the Lima sites that the Air Force had in Laos. And the reason for that, even though the CH-53s and the CH-53s had the range and everything else, but it was the loiter time. Once you got inserted, the helicopters would move off to one area and they would loiter for 10, 15, 20 minutes in the event we needed an immediate extraction. And
how far, whenever they would deliver you there, or how far were you usually away from the point that you were really going? I mean, they wouldn't have an LZ, right around the corner from where you're going.
Topography would dictate a lot. Most of the times they would put you a ridge or a mountain on, and it could be anywhere from 2 miles, 3 miles, something like that. So it would depend on topography. They would put you at the edge of one map square, so to speak, and you would walk into the next map square. Now, our maps were about this size with some grids, and it was just a piece of green paper with grids on it. Give you an example. We'd get back and we would get debriefed, and we would say, yes, we were picked up at this point, but we were inserted over here. And they say, okay, Sergeant Pugh, how deep and how fast was the river crossing there? And you would say, what river? What? Well, Sergeant Pugh, you see this little blue line right here? Yeah, that denotes a river. Where did you cross it? How deep was it? There's no river there. Sergeant Pugh. And they would give me the little blue thing denotes water. Well, there's a very good chance that they took that photograph when in the rainy season. Or sometimes when it would rain about a mountain 3 or 4 miles away, and all that water goes downhill, you're going to have a river. In dry season, no river. Or sometimes it would be the opposite. You'd come back and you would say, we crossed the river, and they'd go, show me the river on this map. Well, it was right here. So we had some interesting debriefs from time to time.
These were all serious debriefs. I mean, it wasn't.
Oh, yeah, these were
sitting around drinking coffee or anything.
No, these were serious debriefs.
Because tell us what MACV-SOG stands for.
Military Assistance Command Vietnam Studies and Observation Group.
Okay.
Now, the charter was created in January of 1964. Okay. It was authorized to operate out of North Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, South Vietnam. Okay. With contingency planning for northern Burma, the Golden Triangle, Quang Si, Quang Tung, and Yunnan provinces in southern China.
And that charter was secret.
It was finally declassified in 1997 to the point where President Johnson, Nixon, Ford, Carter, and Reagan denied us on live TV that we had no American troops, Laos and Cambodia and other locations.
Well, and it was later that people in your group received awards and
Yes.
Medal of Honor and things like that. Because before they couldn't acknowledge that anything happened.
Oh, I know that. Not only that, but if you got wounded and a medic could slap a Band-Aid on you, and it happened in Laos, all you got was the Band-Aid. Now, if you got a wound and it required doctor's intervention, that wound was attributed to a battle somewhere in South Vietnam.
So you could still get a Purple Heart, but it wasn't for where you got the Purple Heart.
Right. It was not in Laos. So yeah, for example, when ended up in the hospital, February 7th, 1969, they want to know where this happened. And the medical guy that was with me, oh, that happened in such and such a province, such as, whatever it was. I have, what? Well, anyway, whatever happened to me, it happened in that province in that battle. I have no clue. To this day, I still don't know what battle in Vietnam it happened.
So you did get a Purple Heart then?
I'm having some issues with that, but yes, when I got my DD-214, there was no Purple Heart on it. Went home to Panama, the Canal Zone. I'm coming home. I get a packet from 5th Special Forces Group, Purple Heart, ARCOM, Air Medal, and Good Conduct. Now I'm all packed up. And of course, my mother and my aunt, they're looking at it. And I can't put all this stuff because I am packed. I can't put anything in my suitcase. And of course, my aunt, that is such a pretty medal, I'll take it. I just gave them everything to them. I should have kept the paperwork. That was my 215. You're all familiar with the 215. Okay. So now they can't find my 215. Yet, they've got my hospital records, but they can't find my 215.
Isn't that something with all this, all the ways that we can track down paperwork, we can't seem to track down your correction to your military, military record. Oh my goodness gracious. That's insane.
But yet, they know where everything happened. They've got my hospital record, blah, 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 so on and so forth. But they can't find my award for that. I mean, go figure. Go figure. And so yeah. And not only that, I know the guy that wrote, unfortunately, the guy that wrote me up and everything else, he's passed away. But anyway, that's beside the point. But it's just one of those.
One of those times to find the congressperson that's coming in, and
we're working on it. We're working on it. But again, it's not only for myself, but remember, I was going to go back to Larry Trimble, okay, the man on the mountain. I'm glad that you all are sitting down. He did receive an award, okay, an ARCOM for valor.
That's it?
That is it. That's a slap in the face. He should have gotten a DSC Silver Star for sure. And so again, I'm working with my congressman and so on and so forth. Unfortunately, he lives in another state, so we're trying to kind of coordinate things to get so he gets his due award. Unfortunately, a lot of the records, especially when they have to do with those 3-letter people, they're not going to release those records. But yeah, we're not in for the awards. I mean, yes, I like to get some of the guys to get the recognition so their families can say, hey, you know, Grandpa did this. You know, this is what, Papa did or whatever. And
it's just the right thing. It's the right thing to do. Even though we were never there and we didn't do these things, it's still the right thing to do, right?
Not only that, but right now, as you and I are speaking, there are young men and women that are performing acts of extreme violence on our behalf, so you and I could have a good night's sleep tonight.
Amen.
And the thing about it is, they too are in places that they've never been, it never happened.
Yep.
And they too are going to have their issues.
I think I heard you call it undocumented heroism.
Right. They're undocumented. And the thing about it is, these men and women are coming back and, you know, they go to the VA and they present their issues or whatever. Well, where did that happen? Well, ma'am, sir, you don't have the clearance for that. And so we have to take care of our younger generation. Mm-hmm. One of the reasons that I give talks, it isn't so much to glorify war or whatever, because I don't like wars. I've seen it, and it's devastating, both physically and mentally. But it's lessons learned. They don't teach history anymore.
No, they don't.
And so we see patterns in history that if we could just recognize those patterns and say, hey, let's not go down that rabbit hole again. And if we can prevent people from going down that rabbit hole again, I think we will be in a safer place. And that's one of the reasons I enjoy talking to high schools and things of that nature. I always tell them, because somewhere along the line, they'll always say, well, what did you do? And I go, I didn't do squat. My team, my unit, I was part of the unit. I'm not John Wayne. You see a movie and it's, 98% of the movie is John Wayne. He's doing it all. Well, no, I'm on the team. I was part of a team.
Yeah, not real life. That's not the way it works.
That's right. Now, Mary, you were in the Air Force, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now you were part of a team, right?
I sure was.
And you also were served. Now you were what Army?
Army, yeah.
Yeah, Rick was an Army medic.
And again, I'm going to tell Rick, medics and helicopter pilots, they have nothing between their ears. I'm telling you, they have nothing between their ears, but they have got the biggest cojones this side of heaven.
Yeah.
Because they're going into a battlefield and all they've got is that little canvas bag. Am I correct?
That's right.
You can't shoot back. So my respect for men like you to lay it on the line when all hell is going on. Yes.
And there was a lot of people saved by those helicopter pilots and those medics over there.
Oh yeah, trust me, because I'm the one that is yelling, we have a hot LZ, we have a hot LZ, and their response is Roger that, and they're coming in.
Right.
And
they're coming in anyway.
They're coming in anyway. And they're as cool cucumbers. I mean, these are
they were just kids.
They were kids. They were 20 years old, these warrant officers. The way I describe it in my talks is that their cheeks have never felt the sharp edge of a razor blade.
Yep.
And they are coming in. Cojones, they need wheelbarrows to carry them in. And so, and we had a deal where they never paid for a drink in our camp.
It's kind of the way it is whenever you go with Don Graves, the Iwo Jima survivor. You don't pay for a meal, you don't pay for drinks or anything when you're with him. So,
well, I know. I mean, these and I was lucky that when I was going through basic training and through the early part of my short military career, that we still had World War II guys there. And I'll never forget, there's one particular sergeant major. I didn't know him that well. I'm trying to remember his name. But he showed up one day and he had a 101st Airborne combat patch. A couple of days later, I see that he had a 187 combat patch from Korea. And we had an inspection that Saturday. So he wore his summer khaki uniform. And I had a chance to look at his jump wings. 4 combat jumps. 2 with the 101st and 2 with the 187. May had silver star, bronze star. I don't know how many bronze stars he had there. I mean, he had like what they call COB, continued on back. Those were the shoulders that us young whippersnappers, and still to this day, we stood on. Deepest respect for these men and women.
And now the guys like you that were in Vietnam, those are the shoulders that our young people in service are standing on now, because you all have led the way. You were on the wall and you did what you had to do in an unpopular war.
True.
Hundreds of thousands were drafted and didn't want to go, but they did.
Yeah. And the thing about it is I meet a lot of these young men, special forces guys, Green Berets, just like myself. And I feel very humble. To the point of embarrassment. Really, when I have this guy from Delta, that unit that doesn't exist, that guy. And he introduces me as, this is my hero. And so I have I don't see myself like that.
You know, and I think we see that a lot
Yeah, right.
in our heroes like you
Right.
that don't look at yourself as a hero. But
Yep, because the ones today, right, Rick, they stood, you know, they're standing just like you did. You said you stood on their shoulders. They're looking up to you for what you did. And no hero ever sees themselves as a hero. Well, I just don't know of anybody that happens with.
and
And Rick and I have met a lot of people.
We have our heroes like you, and you have your heroes, you know?
Right.
Like, let's talk about Captain Richard Dick Meadows, because I think you served with him about the last 3 months that you were
in
country.
Dick Meadows, my God. That man, we were given Delta 4. And we had to do a brief back. And Phil Quinn was my team leader there. Tony Bandiera had already been medevaced. So Phil was my team leader. And we're getting ready to do the brief back. And normally the team leader does the brief back. And Phil is getting ready and he says, I want your assistant to give me the brief back. That was me. I was the assistant team leader. And I'm going, oh, diddly squat. Oh my God. But I was prepared because Phil and I had already done our homework together. So I gave the brief back. And which went pretty good. The following mission, we did Alpha 10. Now, that time, Phil said, I want you to be the team leader on this particular mission. So, again, we go and see Captain Meadows. And he looks at Phil and he goes, I want your assistant to give the brief back. And I said, Captain Meadows, Dowey Meadows, I'm the team leader on this one. He's my assistant. And he gave me this look. I'll never forget it. He gave me this look like, you guys double-crossed me. But he didn't say anything. And so, but it was good. He was very meticulous in his planning. He always wanted you to have, because he would always question you. What are you going to do if this happens? What happens if, what are you going to do for this? What are you planning for this? That kind of stuff. He was very meticulous in your brief backs, everything. He did not like surprises. But he already, in his mind, he was already prepared for that surprise. And that stuck with me. I go to as you all know, like most of us, we carry, you know. And the reason I carry is I have to protect my lovely wife. She is my life. Period. There's no quotations. There's no parentheses. She's my life.
And that's Phyllis.
And that's Phyllis. And so we go to a restaurant. I have no idea where I'm going to be seated. So the first thing and of course I'm not familiar with the restaurant or whatever. So I always face the door. That's number one. And number two, I always have to go to the bathroom. I get up. There's a side door. The kitchen always has a back door. By Texas law, all kitchens have a back door. So I know where the kitchen is. There's a back door. I look at the side doors. Then I get I kind of look around, and go to the bathroom, whether I need to or not. I just go to the bathroom, come back out. I'm good. But in my mind, I have already set up a plan. Go to the movies. Same thing. I don't know where I'm going to be sitting. I do a 7-second. That's emergency over there, emergency over there, emergency back there. Okay. Bingo. I know exactly what I'm going to be doing. And I picked that up from Captain Meadows. It's a little trait that I picked up from him. I don't like surprises.
He had a saying too. What was his saying?
Well, he had many.
The ones you can repeat.
Well, the one that's what I'm trying to remember is the ones that I have to really, really clean up. Basically, is one that he used. He says, "Well, don't step on your dick."
Something. There was another one about about a quarter or something, wasn't there?
Oh well, the one was.
Was that his saying?
It was yeah. Give no. Yeah, give no quarter, receive no quarter. Yeah. So basically, when in Recon, we had these 4. Actually, there were more than 4. Some people would say there were maybe 7, but there were 4 core rules that we had. Rule number 1, survive. Rule number 2, win. Rule number 3, bring back the information. Rule number 4, give no quarter, receive no quarter. So that was basically it. And when we were on a mission, we would be outnumbered 2, 3, 4, 5 to 1 in less than 20 minutes.
And more. Sometimes.
And more, yes. But at
1,000
least
to 1 or
a lot. And the funny thing about it is that if you ever look at our after action reports, if you ever have access to them, we were always fighting a reinforced platoon. We could be fighting a company. And in the after action report would be a reinforced platoon. In the after action report for for Lynn Black, when he took on North Vietnamese division, the initial after action report was a reinforced platoon.
Well, I guess that's true. I mean, a division, there's reinforcements for a platoon. So
right. And he should have gotten the Medal of Honor, and all he got was a Silver Star.
But I think out of all the MACV-SOGs, there were about 15 Medal of Honor recipients.
There were.
Was there that many? 12.
Out of
12.
Out of the 17 Medal of Honor during the Vietnam War now, after over half were given to SOG. Now, after SOG, after the war, then yes, we had some more. Rose, Mike Rose.
Melvin Morris was one of them.
Say that again.
Melvin Morris.
I think
he was one, and then Tommy Norris was another one.
Yeah. No more.
Wasn't he?
Yeah. Yeah. So there were a few afterwards, but during the actual war itself, no. And again, even then, the location of the incident, if you read it, the citation
happened south in Maine and Saigon or something.
Yeah,
huh?
It just never happened in Laos or Cambodia, whatever. Give you an example. My brother was stationed in Thailand. And he had to fly up to Chiang Mai, pick up an American team that had casualties. And because he told me the story later. And he said, Gene, I was up there. They brought back 2 body bags, and I had my name tag. And the guy said, hey, is your brother named Gene Pugh? And my brother Ed said, yeah. He says, he's a good guy. Now, mind you, this is up in Chiang Mai, up near the Burmese border. So I just let it go at that.
You were known all over the place, weren't you?
Yeah, notorious or whatever. But this is 1967. But yeah, the Air Force guys, they're crazy.
They are. And those helicopter pilots are crazy too, like you said.
But a lot, in fact, even though MACV-SOG was declassified in 1997, large portions that are still classified are the Air Force files. Those are the ones that are still classified.
Mary just sent me a message. Her battery's about to run down on her iPad, so she's going to be checking out a little bit. But we haven't even gotten to the jungle with you yet, so we're going to have to schedule you again so we can hear after you got out of Forward Base 4 some of the jungle experiences, because I've listened to some of those stories of you all being on a trail and having to dive off into the jungle, and you thought it was just a few people come by, but it was 20 minutes worth of people and then more people after that. So
that was an ambush that we had set up. And probably one of the scariest moments I've ever had, because jungle visibility is very, very short. And I was afraid that one guy was going to turn around and see me.
And then you don't just have to worry about you and not being able to breathe for 20 minutes and worried about them seeing you, but you've got the rest of your team that.
Oh, yeah.
You don't want them to get seen either.
Oh, yeah. You have to worry about yourself, but them. And then, of course, we were also Murphy's Law. You're all familiar with Murphy's Law. If anything will go wrong, that's when it's going to go wrong.
Yeah. If it could, it will. Yeah.
That's right. And so, we were very afraid of Murphy.
Yeah, and, I don't blame you.
We were afraid of Murphy all the time. Very, very quick deal. We were up near the DMZ. We had RO end and everything else. We were making our trek through the jungle. We were breaking jungle, meaning we were not on a trail. And Nook said that he had to do a biological. So we stopped.
He was a Vietnamese.
With you. And so he went off to one side there, took off his web gear and everything, dropped his pants. And right then and there, and we heard voices, Vietnamese voices, and unbeknownst to us, there was a trail. There was a little path, I don't know, 10, 15 feet in front of us, right there. And they walked right by us, never saw us. And all I remember was looking back at Nook, and his eyes got that big, and a turd was coming out of his butt. You talk about a keystone moment.
That was one of them.
One of many. You interview the teams, and they're going to tell you that, yes, they had more keystone moments than anything else. If you interview Tilt Myers, he'll tell you the time where a division of monkeys came through through the jungle on the treetops, and he thought it was a North Vietnamese division on the ground. The Frenchman, if he was still alive, he would tell you the time the Cobra went right by him. All sorts of
jungle stuff, centipedes crawling on you,
centipedes crawling on you,
mosquitoes, and
one of our teams got mauled by a tiger. Another one got involved in an elephant stampede of some sort. So yeah, that was
always something happening in the jungle.
Oh yeah.
But before Mary leaves, we've got an organization called Roll Call.
Yes, very familiar with it.
500. You've been to it before?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
Yeah,
well,
I thought you had.
Yeah. Mary, I'm going to go ahead and speak for Mary, but Mary needs to get you on the program to come and talk to us sometime.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll work out all those details. We'll connect.
When I do that, I'll if you have a deal where I could do it like a thumb drive. I got a 5-minute presentation.
No, we need about a 25-minute presentation. So.
Right. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Yep. And so we'll work out all those kind of details. My battery is about to die here, but Gene, you're a hero, and you probably don't ever think of yourself that way. But a lot of people look up to what you did and appreciate what you did, even though I know when you came home, it didn't feel that way.
True.
I'm glad that the public has seen the light, and they're no longer treating Vietnam veterans the way that they were. So, it was a bad time in our history. I've lived long enough to have I'm old enough to remember what was happening when y'all were coming home. And I still went in. My dad did not want me to go in the military in 1978 because of the bad taste in people's mouth over Vietnam. But I did it anyway, because that's what we kids do, right?
I understand that.
But we really appreciate you being here. And to Rick's point, I'll get in contact with you, and we would love to have you come and get you, set up to come speak. We usually have about 500 in attendance these days.
I understand.
So it's a big group and a big audience, but we love to have our veterans come just share their story, and that's what it's all about. Is some of your story may connect to somebody else in that audience, and it helps them to heal through some of what they've been afraid to talk about. Because when you talk about it, maybe it's not so scary for them to talk about it.
Right.
And it's very healing. So we appreciate you.
Thank you. I normally talk about the unit because very few people know about the unit. So I talk about the unit, its origin, and so on and so forth, the breakdown and what have you. And I inject some humor in it whenever possible.
Very cool. Well, I appreciate you.
Thank you, Mary. I appreciate it.
And you've written a couple of books.
I've written 3. In fact, whoops. The first one, this one here, you had there. The second one, the reunion mission. And the third one, the diplomat, comes out on Amazon tomorrow.
Does it really?
Comes out on Amazon tomorrow, the diplomat.
Okay, we'll have a link to those.
Yeah. And
surrender is not an option. It's a fiction.
These are novels. These are, fiction, so to speak.
But about 90% of it are true accounts of things that you experienced and saw.
What it is what I did was I got real people, composite characters, and these are composite characters of real people. In the book, the missions are real, the call signs are real, the target areas are real. And so what I did in some cases, in a lot of cases, was that I made composites of 3 individuals' missions and blended it all into one mission.
I'm anxious to read those.
Yeah.
And whenever you come to roll call, you can bring your books, and we can have you sell those and have a book signing too.
Sure. And the thing about it is, Rick, is that I've also, and I kind of follow Clint Eastwood's deal, and that is don't let the old man in.
That's right.
And I'm 80 years old, started 2 companies. I started, of course, with my partners. I have partners in this. Impact Studios, mainly to preserve my IP, intellectual properties. I've written 16 screenplays.
Have you really?
Yeah. One of the screenplays deals with the attack on our camp. And because people always want to know about what happened. And I interviewed, of course, Travis and a bunch of the others. And so I've got their stories in there.
And where does Travis, he lives near you?
He lives up in McKinney.
Okay. And then Trimble?
Larry Trimble, he lives in Shasta Lake, California.
Okay. It would probably be possible some evening maybe to have those 2 guys and maybe a couple more that were with you to just kind of get on like this and just talk. I'd like to do that.
That would be good, yes.
And that would give y'all a chance to share common stories and other stories about some of the things that happened.
Sure.
You were talking about not letting the old man in, and there's his name is Tank Gunner. You probably run into Tank. That's his pen name. Vietnam. But he started writing when he turned 75, and he's about 85 now, and he's on his 10th book. So it's never too late.
No. And the other project that we started, because the 4 of us are veterans, we started Veterans Mortgage of America.
Okay.
And so a little different from New Day, in the sense that when New Day is a good organization, don't get me wrong, but they have a lot of civilians there. Whereas in Veterans Mortgage of America, all 4 of us are veterans. And when you look up our site, veteransmortgageofamerica.com, and you look up Jeff Wilson, he wrote the legislation that went before Congress for veterans mortgage for the VA.
Wow.
Michael Pankow, his father, helicopter pilot with the Pink Panthers, he is probably in the top 5 nationwide for reverse mortgages. I'm sure you are familiar with Wade Pfau.
Mm-hmm.
Wade Pfau is up there in Las Colinas somewhere. He's right below Wade Pfau with reverse mortgages. So he's very well known. PJ Putnam, Air Force guy. He does our commercial lending and what have you. And then there's me. I'm just the ambassador.
Well, you're a good ambassador for them.
Yeah, I try. But yeah, that's what I try to do. Like this morning, we had our call. We have it Tuesdays and Thursdays, and with one organization. Then the other days we have it with the other organization. And so that's what we do. Keeps me busy and off the
Still
street.
staying busy, and then you're out and about all the time, because I've seen you at some other places. I think probably the Metroplex Marines, and then
Yes,
of course we were at Ken's funeral the other day, his interment, and
right,
then the graveside, and then the next day at the celebration of life. So,
right.
and I told this story last week about Lucky Luckadoo. You know Lucky?
Oh yeah. Oh yes, yes.
Yeah. Well, I was talking to him, and we were visiting. He'd been to roll call, talked to us before, and so I was, it was over, and I was going out to the car, and he was with me, and I thought there was probably a car to pick him up, and we kept walking to the parking lot. He goes and gets in his car to drive home at 102. So I hope at 102 I'm driving.
Oh, me too. And not only that, but he has got all of his marbles.
He does.
I mean, that man is sharp.
We just celebrated a birthday last Friday for one of our World War II veterans, Bill McIntyre, 104 years old, and he's just as sharp as a tack. You know?
Oh, I know that. And of course, I'm just awed. I mean, just awed of the sheer courage. And the difference between courage and bravery is instant. Courage is when you're betting your life on 51% that you're coming back. On that 1% that, yeah, I'm going to take a chance on that 1% to come back. Not 50-50, but that 1%, that 51%. And so, yeah, these guys that flew the B-17s and B-24s and what have you, 8th Air Force.
Those were some heroes because
oh yeah,
for every one that came back, there was hundreds of them that didn't.
Oh, I know.
And think about those air crews, that perished. Not just the pilot and the co-pilot, but maybe 8 or 10 other guys on that airplane.
I would talk to some of the World War II guys that they're paratroopers. And the same thing too, they would say, they made the jump into on D-Day, and then they made the jump in Market Garden. And I asked one of them, which is the scariest? And he said, Market Garden. And I said, well, why? He says, it was in the daytime.
And then a lot of those guys went on to Bastogne.
Yeah.
In the trucks. They weren't.
That's true. But he said, that one petrified me. Or meaning him. He said, it just petrified me. He says that we were going to be jumping in the daytime.
Mm.
And he says, I don't mind jumping. He says, and I asked him about a D-Day. And he said, yeah, there was a lot of shooting and everything else. But first of all, they had to get the searchlight on you or whatever. And as long as they didn't get the searchlight on you, you were okay. And he said, he says, I was lucky. Searchlight didn't find me or us,
And then the guys that were on the gliders too,
Yes.
There's a lot of casualties there, crashing into the trees and the forest.
Never met a glider pilot. No, never have. And never met a guy that went in with the gliders.
And we had a fellow that had gone in with the gliders.
And a lot of those were the artillery guys.
Yeah.
They had the little French, the French 75, and the Jeeps and so on and so forth. Those were the guys that went in with them. Never met them. Never, but I met a guys that did jump. We were having, it was 1967, and had the anniversary of D-Day. And Sergeant Major Hall, after the morning formation, he says, as you all know, today is June 6th and so on and so forth. This is for all of you that participated in this grand event. Why don't you all meet over here in the back of the formation? So, his group tent, hut, dismiss. And we see these guys walking over there, and Kropik, the German guy, he starts walking over there.
He was there, just on the wrong side.
And it was so funny because they said, Kropik, on our side. And then he goes, nah, come on over. But we had, we had Kropik, Martin Urich. Martin Urich was a a tank commander in the Battle of Kursk. Oh, there was another guy named Kyle, Kiel, Kiel. Didn't know him that long because when I got there, then shortly after that, he went to Vietnam. But he was also in the German Wehrmacht during World War II. And Sass, Harry Sass, he was in the Hitler Youth. And so, yeah. So we had a lot of DPs in our unit, in our ODA.
Yeah, I went in the Army in 72, so I didn't see that many guys that had been, in World War II. So some Korean, and then, of course, Vietnam, but we have had roll call members that were in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes.
Those guys are getting few and far between now.
They are. They really are. And I've seen the original. I've seen guys with the 2 stars of the CIB on them, and this is back then, Yeah, because in fact, the sergeant major had that. He had the 2 stars on the CIB.
Working on his 3rd one.
That was his 3rd one, yeah. And like I said, it had, continued on back and the whole thing. But yeah, those guys were tough. They were tough. They were fair. They were fair. That was one thing, was that they were fair. They would push you, but they were fair.
And they were pushing you to make you a survivor.
They did. I'll never forget when I was going through Special Forces training, there was a Sergeant Black. And I was doing my road march. And I had literally fallen flat on my face. I mean, just flat on my face. And I remember looking at these pair of shiny Cochrane boots right by my face there. And I looked up, and he was standing over me with his hands on his hips. He didn't say a word. He smiled. And I was able to say, not today. And somehow or another, I struggled up, got up. He never helped me. Got up, and I remember taking that first step, and I looked at him, and he's still smiling. Took my second one and continued. And so I always had it in my mind that it was not today.
That was just the encouragement you needed to see that smile and see those boots.
Yeah, and that was it. But not today. And so now tomorrow I may quit, but not today.
Not this day.
Not this way. So that was always my mantra, that not today.
And you made it.
I did. I really did. I really did. But yes, the invitation from Mary, yes, love to go there. And
let's work on that, doing a deal like this at night with some of the guys that you served with. Sure.
One of the guys, of course, California time, that would be easy. Then Ray Sinkowicz, he was the one that shot the 2 sappers there at by the Talk. And he was at Quezon also.
Was he really?
Yeah, he was at Quezon. And there's a guy that, but he lives in Pro Tem, Arkansas. Unfortunately, excuse me. And because we've tried it before, his link
internet connection's not good.
Is not good. Is not good. Because we even have problems when we with the cell. So, but he was also at Quezon, and in the book, the revenge mission that Purvis goes on is based on his revenge mission.
My goodness.
Yeah, is based on when Ricardo Davis got killed. He was using the same team, RT Copperhead, and was going to go out. And of course, I volunteered to go to go on the team on that mission. And Phil Quinn, he jerked me up against the wall and he says, "Listen to me. If anybody's going to go on that mission, it's going to be me, because Phil and Werther and I, we're like this. I mean, we're like that. We're tight." And so instead, Werther went ahead and got Jim Lamont to go with him. And Jim Lamont was on the mission where Ricardo got killed. And the reason he picked him, he said, "I wanted him on the team. It's just like a guy falling off his horse. Put him back on the horse." And they went out and they brought death and destruction upon the enemy. They called in a lot of airstrikes. And that was the last mission that Jim ran. That was the last mission. And he thanked Bill for that. He says, "Thank you." He says, "But that's my last mission."
He knew it was time.
Yeah. And so whenever a guy said, excuse me, "That's it," you never questioned it or anything like that. We had a guy named Scherer, Scherer, Scherer. He had run 12 missions. And he said he was going in on his 13th. He got on the skids, ready to jump off, and couldn't do it. He said he couldn't get off the skids. He said he tried and tried and tried. He couldn't get off the skids. And he says, "I can't do it." The assistant team leader was on the other helicopter. And so he was able to communicate to the to abort. And that was it. He never ran on another recon mission.
Oh my goodness.
But he ran 12. And so there was and a lot of guys did that. They would say, "Hey, it's time for me to go." And no one said anything bad about him, because we knew that there was a price to pay.
Because if you did do something and say something to them, and then they went and did another mission and got killed, then you'd really feel bad, because that guy knew his time was up and he was done. So
the thing about it was, if a guy said that I'm not going to make it, you took him off.
Yeah.
You took him off. And there were some guys that would say, "Hey, I'm not going to make it." But they would have a mission further down. Prime example would be Art Bader. I saw Art right around Thanksgiving of 1968. He was at our camp, and I met him in the hallway in the transient barracks. And I was going to go out on a mission at the end. In fact, at the end of the month. And so I asked him, I says, what are you doing? He says, well, I'm on my way down to Nha Trang to change my beneficiary. I said, why? He said, Gene, I've heard the howling of the wolf and I've seen the handwriting on the wall. Ain't going to make it, brother. And I said, hey, you know, shake it off. He says, no, this is for real. We separated. He walked a few feet, then he stopped. He called out my name, so I turned around. He came back and gave me a hug, and he says, it's okay, brother, it's okay. Now, Art was not the huggy guy. He was not the hug person. And I felt that strange. November the 30th, clear blue skies. We're going to do what we call an eldest son, was to put a booby trap, ammunition on the trail. Helicopters come in. Spec 4 comes down. He goes, hey, Pugh, they want you up at the talk. So tell him you didn't see me. And he goes, you dumb shit. Look at them. They can see you. He says, Sergeant West wants to see you. Well, Sergeant West wants to see you now. So Major Toomey says, go and take care of it. So I go back there, and it was, anyway, some tiddlywink stuff. Helicopters take off. And they go north to Phubai and Mylock to pick up 2 replacements. One guy that came down with the malaria, and a guy to replace me. The helicopter was shot out of the sky. Everybody on board was killed. So yeah.
You never know.
You never know. And I've seen it. We had another guy. I didn't know him per se. I mean, I've seen him around. He got wounded, and from what I understand, it was a survivable wound. But he kept saying, "I'm going to die. I'm going to die. I'm going to die." And before he got him to the hospital, he died. And I'm sure you've probably seen something like that or heard or whatever. I mean, he just talked himself to death. I mean, he just said, "I'm going to die. I'm going to die."
Something happened to the will to live and will to survive, and they just did what they said they were going to die.
But from my understanding, there was a survivable wound, and so, and you just never know what's going to happen on those things. But again, it was a different time, and never made plans for the future. Never did. It was making plans for the mission. Never made plans for next week or week after next or whatever. Calendar dates. Some of them came out. I mean, like August 23rd. Yes, that one pops out in me. November the 30th. That one pops out on me. February the 7th. That one pops out in me because I was in a hospital. Things like that. But other than that, and you'll say, well, Gene, did you run any missions in October? And I'll get a blank face, like
they just all run together.
They all run in together, and a buddy of mine would call him Nemu, and we were having a phone call, and he was reminding me about a country western troop that came into our camp to do a little USO show. And I told him I don't remember it. He goes, "What do you mean you don't remember? You were there." I wasn't there. He says, "Pugh, you were there." I don't remember. He says, "I'll prove it to you that you were there." He says, "Look at your computer in the next 20 minutes or whatever." So sure enough, he sends me a photograph, and there I am leaning up against the wall of this, watching the his country western group. But I don't remember it.
Some things like that just get blocked out. And even in my life, you know, I think my wife and I'll be talking about something. Don't you remember that? No, I don't remember that. But it's so vivid in somebody else's mind, but it's just not on the radar.
Right. And so I paid him. A few minutes later, we were at the convention. I paid him the beer that I owed him. So, but yeah. But I mean, in my mind, I don't remember that particular episode. Just was not.
It was not an important memory to bookmark.
Right. And so, but yeah, and there's a few of them like that. I've been rained out on missions. We were ready to go and everything else, and it was raining on the mission site, and we never went on. We never went in. And so, you know, how many times have you rained out? I don't know. But I know that I've been rained out a lot of times. But if you know, how many? I don't know.
You didn't keep a record of it or log or anything?
No, we didn't. We were not allowed to have a log. No diaries were allowed.
Just all right here.
Right. And so I remember one time I was telling no, there were three of us. We were all sitting there. It was at one of our conventions, and we were just talking back and forth. And I made a comment, and this one guy was talking about this one particular mission. And I interjected and I said, no, it didn't happen that way. No, Pugh, that was the other mission. So I got the missions, and then the other guy called and no, that wasn't that. That was the one where, and it was like four of us trying to remember this one particular mission. It was rather humorous. Turned out to be we never got it right anyway. So,
well, that's good. Well, Gene, I appreciate you being our guest today.
Thank you so much.
We want to get you to roll call and speak to roll call, and then we want to do some more of these with you, and then with some of the people that you served with. So,
certainly, that would be great. The man that you really want to talk to would be Larry Trimble.
He sounds like an interesting guy.
He is, in my mind, he is my hero. I mean, he's the one that saved the camp. He doesn't say much about it, but he saved the camp. He, a lot of us that were in camp, and Travis Mills will attest to that. It was raining 82 millimeter mortars, and they were traversing left and right, up and down.
They had you all dialed in, didn't they?
More or less, yes. And then, of course, we had satchel charges and grenades. And like I said, on this 5-minute video, you will notice the key word that all of us, there's 3 of us on this video. And we keep saying the same word: explosion, explosion, explosions. It was, we were awakened by this tremendous explosion. There was a muffled explosion. There were explosions everywhere. You know, it was always explosions. And so that gives you an idea of the amount of explosions. And then the big explosion when they hit the S4 depot there, and the propane gas blew up.
That was a terrifying and scary experience, wasn't it?
It was, because it would be different if we were fighting them, if they were on the outside attacking us.
And they were swarming you.
Right. And they were inside the camp. And so when they attacked, we couldn't get to our defensive posts. And if we did, we would get shot. And so we were more afraid of friendly fire than we were afraid of the bad guy fire. But they were there. We can attest to that because we got the body counts and everything else. So yeah. But yeah, it was also humorous in some cases, to a certain extent. I almost shot a guy that was heading out towards to the front, and Ray Sinkowicz, who was with me, he goes, "Why'd you hesitate?" And I said, "Viet Cong don't wear red pajamas." He goes, "Yeah, you got a point there." But yeah, but yeah, that's but yes, I would love to just give me a time and a date, so that way I can kind of prep these people up.
Okay.
And so that they can, and then of course the site and everything else, get it all set up, and we're good for that. And maybe even Mary can join us too.
Sure. Yeah, she'll be on here too. So, but we enjoyed having you today, Gene. Amazon.com, Surrender Not an Option, and the Reunion Mission, and tomorrow, The Diplomat.
The Diplomat, yes.
All some great books by Gene Pugh.
Yes. Special
Forces, MACV-SOG. So thank you so much for being a part of this, Gene.
Thank you very much, Rick, and it's always an honor and a pleasure.
Go Army.
Airborne all the way.
I'll see you soon.
You take care, brother.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Well, thank you all for being on the podcast today and listening to us. It was a real honor and pleasure to have Gene Pugh with us today. And we look forward to having some more interaction with him and with some of those other guys that fought the war that didn't exist, had fought in places that didn't exist, and now they can tell some of their stories. So we just look forward to having more stories like that. Just remember that roll call, we're going to have our second annual clay shoot Sunday, October 13th. There's plenty of time to get your teams together and get on there. We need the sponsors to get lined up as soon as we can. And then another thing that's coming up is Return to D-Day Beaches adventure, and one of our roll call members, Dwayne Lee, he's got some tours going, and now they're booking for next summer. And if you're with roll call and you go on these, well, they'll do a $250 donation to roll call. This is a great way to see the beaches of Normandy, learn about the D-Day, and to actually go where it started. So we just look forward to hearing stories from people that go on those. And remember, if you're a roll call member, when you book it, we'll get a $250 donation for that. And roll call, we're going to have our next roll call meeting next month. It's going to be at a different location. If you go to roll-call.org, you can find out more information about the next meeting and get the newsletter. We look forward to seeing you at the next roll call meeting. So this has been kind of a longer podcast than we usually have, but we covered a lot of territory, but we still need to hear some more stories about some of those jungle experiences, because you take a little group of 10 people into the jungle in places that you aren't supposed to be, getting in firefights, and then coming back to tell about it. It's just incredible. So for all of you that have been a part of it, we thank you for being here. Gene, thank you for being our guest. And Mary, she and I will be back next week at Hometown Heroes. Y'all have a good week.